Al Jazeera has obtained footage showing Israeli forces in Gaza shooting 2 unarmed Palestinians dead at close range. One of the men repeatedly waves what appears to be a piece of white fabric to show they're not a threat. This is an international symbol of surrender. The bodies of the 2 Palestinians are then buried by an Israeli bulldozer. Tareq Azzoum has more from Rafah in southern Gaza.
Completely disturbing and distressing images that the video that Al Jazeera has obtained shows how 2 unarmed Palestinians have been killed by the Israeli forces. They have been completely disarmed. They did not impose any significant threat on the Israeli forces as they were completely away with a distance from the Israeli forces who were taking a cover behind sand piles. And that's absolutely terrifying as those Palestinians have been killed, and we completely see how Israeli armored bulldozers have been buried them on the coastal line of the besieged enclave. And from the video that has been obtained, it's absolutely clear that the location where those 2 Palestinians have been killed and shot by Israeli forces was completely next to the recent pier that had been established by the World Central Kitchen in order to facilitate aid delivering process to the Gaza Strip on Gaza City. And that incident wasn't absolutely the first from its kind within the past few weeks. We have been multiply seeing how the Israeli forces have been carrying out field executions against a number of Palestinians in the northern part of Gaza, where their dead bodies have been remained alone and laying on the roads, and sometimes being piled up with different kinds of garbage, as what have been happening in the northern part of Gaza and Beit Lahia town, where the majority of those dead bodies have been decomposed without being rescued. And that's absolutely terrifying. It's completely a new breach of the international humanitarian law, that those Palestinians were completely unarmed. They did not impose any significant threat.
Let's bring in Richard Falk now, Professor of International Law at Princeton University and a former UN Special Rapporteur on Palestinian human rights. He joins us live from Santa Barbara, California. Thank you for joining us. What do you make of this distressing video?
Well, it is a vivid confirmation of continuing Israeli atrocities directed at innocent and vulnerable and unthreatening Palestinian civilians. And it's shocking because it's made available in convincing evidence in real time. And that's been part of what has been so shocking throughout this entire Israeli onslaught on Gaza, that the eyes and ears of the world have been assaulted in real time by this form of genocidal behavior. And it is a shocking reality that there has been no adverse reaction from the liberal democracies in the West. It is a shameful moment in Western international moral behavior.
What do you think this says about the Israeli military's approach when it comes to international standards and law?
Well, it's completely consistent with Israeli defiance of international law unless it happens to coincide with their strategic interests, which it rarely does during this period of prolonged occupation. Israel pursues its own objectives, which are inconsistent and contradict international humanitarian law and the Genocide Convention and numerous other sources of legal authority. It refuses to comply with the interim order of the International Court of Justice. It refuses to alter its behavior in response to the recent ceasefire, which is a weak resolution of the Security Council. Nevertheless, it's a legally binding document that constitutes a decision, the violation of which is itself a criminal act.
How important do you think it is that incidents like this are documented when it comes to any future accountability?
I think it's very important, not only for the formal legal proceedings that might occur in the future, but to influence civil society around the world in the unambiguous character of Israeli atrocities that are being carried out on a daily basis. And as I say, seeing that evidence in real time. That's never happened before. It's always reconstructed after the fact. And while it's occurring, it's something of an abstraction for public opinion. But here, there is no way to avoid this kind of visual evidence of atrocities. And that makes it a unique and original undertaking by Israel in a conflict that should be subject to UN authority. Remember that Israel is an occupying power under special restrictions by the Geneva Convention, and as such has a primary obligation to protect the civilian population that is occupied. And from the beginning, from 1967, Israel has ignored this fundamental source of legal constraint on its activity as the occupying power.
OK, we'll have to leave it there, Richard Falk. We very much appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.